Welcome back inside the film room. I'm Zach Goins, and today I'm joined by Nick Mohammed. You know him as Nathan Shelley, Nate the Great on Ted Lasso, Apple TV Plus's Emmy-winning comedy. Nick, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very good, thank you. Very good. It must be early where you are. What's
Oh,
the
it
time for you?
is. It's 8 o'clock
Sorry
in the
about that.
morning. No, happy to accommodate. You're a busy man. You're on tour. You're entertaining people left and right. So we are happy to work into your schedule. But I just want to take a quick second here to have a little induction ceremony. You are joining the Four Timer Club on Inside the Film Room. You and Phil
Four
Dunster.
times.
That's elite
Cool.
company for you.
That's great. No, good. I'm glad to be in such a refined company as Phil. That's wonderful.
Well, it's right that we're bringing this back around because you were the first person that I chatted with way back in season one about Ted Lasso, and now here we are closing out this time around. But congratulations, a lot has happened since then. Season three, everything is out in the public. How are we feeling? I know it's a couple weeks removed from the finale. Have the emotions settled yet, or are we still, an emotional wreck?
No, you know what? I feel there's a real nice sort of odd sense of calm actually. I think having got to through to the end of it, I felt like particularly when season three launched, obviously I knew kind of where things were headed, and I knew that Nate was ultimately going to have this quite cathartic ending.
Mhm.
But those first few episodes of Ted, of Ted season three, as far as Nate's concerned, he's still sort of painted as the villain of the piece, and so I kind of had all of this sort of inside me wanting to kind of talk about it, but obviously couldn't really spoil anything for the end. So now it's just nice that everything is out. I feel like it was another roller coaster in terms of Nate's arc. Lots of ups and downs for him. But just sort of so grateful for the fans of the show and for the audience for sticking with it. And yeah, I think that they kind of pulled through with him at the end, and hopefully ultimately sort of forgave him. And if the show's about anything, it's about the our capacity for forgiveness and the power of being able to forgive and so on. And so yeah, it felt that it came full circle for Nate in the end.
Absolutely. I know, obviously, you were just talking about forgiveness, hope, redemption. All of these things are major themes of the show, and you see it across multiple characters. Nathan was
Mm.
obviously the biggest one for this particular season that needed some of those things to come through for him. But you said catharsis as well, and I know you put that in the post, your letter that you wrote after the season when you were breaking down
Mm.
all these Easter eggs and stuff from the behind the scenes process. But catharsis, just the emotional release of feelings, and then, as you put it, it's up to the individual to decide whether or not Nathan is redeemed, like fully redeemed in their eyes. So for you as an individual, Nick, do you believe that Nathan was fully redeemed, or is there still work to be done?
I feel like he has got to a place where he genuinely believes in himself. He's developed quite a lot of emotional intelligence, and I feel like he is finally comfortable with who he is and that he's not pretending anymore. I don't think that he's fixed. I think it would be too cliche to say, oh yeah, that's it. Him and his dad, best of
Mhm.
friends. It's like nothing ever happened. You know, 30 odd years of him being sort of told that he's sort of not good enough or being put down all the time is gonna, that can't just be solved overnight. And but I think that what a lot of those things represented as far as Nate was concerned is the start of a healing process. And a lot of that had to kind of come from within. He had to kind of reckon with himself before he was then able to start reaching out to the others that he had either had disagreements with in the past, or that he had some of his deep-seated insecurities obviously lie with his relationship with his dad, for example. And so for him to sort of pluck up the courage to start to address that and to speak up to his dad is absolutely a really good starting point. And not necessarily that it's up to the audience to decide, but that I feel like um, that, that if you kind of follow his trajectory sort of so far, I think we can see that there is a happy ending there in there for
Right,
Nate, certainly. But I think it was important that it wasn't just sort of suddenly like a big sort of quick fix and all is
right.
forgiven and forgotten. I think that there's still, you can still see in the way that Nate handles stuff in even that season finale. There's still a lot of deep seated sort of emotion in there, even with that moment between him and Ted. He's not going to suddenly forget that or kind of lose that just because Ted has, and quite rightly and quite nicely, sort of forgiven him and said, "Please don't worry about it." Nate will kind of carry that around with him for a long time, I think.
Yeah. Well, I was fully convinced that I did not think that Nathan could be redeemed in my eyes, but my goodness, you got me, Nick. The combination of 311 with the Coach Beard second chances,
Yeah.
that the very gentle headbutt, all of that coupled with, like you were just talking about, the locker room apology between Nathan and Ted. Just what a beautiful series of moments there to kind of bring this thing full circle here at the end of the season. And I know you said that that apology was shot on, it just happened to be your last day of filming, right? So I imagine that emotional wise, that you know, you didn't have to work too hard to get those emotions
No.
going. It was probably flowing already.
Yeah, emotions were running high. We're all tired as well. You know what it's like if people are just tired, and suddenly sort of emotions just kind of, very easy to tap into. And yeah, I mean, it's quite embarrassing. Even during rehearsals for that scene, I was sort of crying. I was like, oh God, Jason, this is so embarrassing. And at one point, I couldn't even look at him because every time I looked at him, it was sort of making me just sort of well up a little bit because he's such a great guy, and we're also indebted to him and this show and the creators of the show. It just felt like we'd all been on this incredible journey. But and to a degree, Nate's journey, not that my journey is similar to Nate's really, but just in that final moment, to have that final moment with Jason and for Nate to have that final moment with Ted, there was kind of a really nice parallel there before Ted leaves, before Jason leaves, and literally Jason was flying back home, I think that next day, the next weekend. So yeah, yeah,
It was art imitating life there. But I think that's
yeah.
a sign that, you know, your show is doing the good stuff. If you know that the actor himself is having the same emotional reaction that you're hoping the audience will when they get to see it. So I
Oh
think
well, we can but hope. Yeah.
well, you know, I think you mentioned earlier the part about Nathan, you know, kind of still being the villain for the first couple episodes here. And I feel like a lot of people, after the way you went out in season 2 with this big bad teaming up with Rupert, I feel like a lot of people were expecting to see more of Nathan being evil, but that's not who he is. Like, he has these issues
Mm.
like you were talking about, but deep down he's not a Rupert. He's not a fully like remorseless person. So as we get, you know, a little bit of snarky wonder kid, a little bit of the sass that we had seen from him, the insecurities, but a lot of it is just Nathan on his own, slowly working his way back to redemption, you know, realizing the wrongs that he's made, feeling regret about them. When you were approaching season 3, did you know, I guess, how early along in the process did you know that, okay, I'm not going full villain arc, I'm instead staying true to the Nathan that we've built up over season 1?
Well, I knew because I knew the end point, and I think in the way that when we started shooting season 2 in particular, I really tried to really pay attention to, even if there were tiny little moments in the early episodes of knowing that this is going to end with Nate being villain Nate. And so even, a lot of the first few episodes of season 2 are quite breezy as far as Nate is concerned. They're quite sort of typical Nate, but just occasionally there's the odd sort of little bit of spice. And obviously that kind of grows and grows throughout that season. And then I think similarly in season 3, it's sort of the opposite. I wanted to make sure that, even just those sort of tiny sort of flickers of regret and remorse and, oh God, what have I done, sort of needed to be there, I think, right from the start. Because you're right, he's not and has never been like a Rupert figure. He just has lost his way a little bit. And, Rebecca lost her way in, the start of season
Right.
1. Jamie lost his way. Roy did to a degree. Jeremy, Higgins even, has done naughty things,
Right.
in season 1 and been rude to Ted and mean to Ted. And it did strike me a little bit that I struggled with how at first the audience were really against Nate. And I get it, I sort of understand it, but I in my head as well, I had to try and remind myself in terms of playing the part, just that, from Nate's point of view, Colin bullied him with Isaac when, in season 1, under Jamie's sort of reign of
Right.
terror. Not reign of terror, that's too strong, those words. But and yes, then Nate was rude to Colin, but it's like that was viewed as so much more severe than
Yeah.
anything that Nate had to put up with. And Nate has undergone years and years of sort of putting up with the locker room banter, for want of a better word, but him being the receiving end of a lot of people's, um, you know, aggression, microaggression, or whatever. And so I feel like, yeah, Nate was absolutely out of line, and I'm not condoning his behavior. And to go to the press to to land Ted in it and reveal about the panic attacks at the end of season 2. Of course, that's quite pointedly cruel, but I just sort of, and not that it's tit for tat, but I also thought, yeah, but he's just, he's lashing out because he doesn't have a support network. You got to be nice to this guy. He needs people surrounding him. He needs kindness because he's not really had it at home, and he now feels abandoned. And so I felt like I could justify the place where Nate started at season 3, but he was never going to just become this out and out villain in the way that Rupert is clearly, I think, the
Right.
embodiment of out and out villainness. Nate was always going to be less than that, but just had to sort of find his way out of that hole he'd ended up sort of falling
Right.
down.
I know, I don't know if you remember, but when we did that first interview back after season 1, I was doing I had each person ask a question to the next person, and you asked Brendan Hunt a question that I used to start his interview. And it was, I want to know what happens in season 3, specifically what happens to Nate. And his answer went on to say, Nathan, I think he said, was the head of Tottenham. He's had Ted killed. He mentioned the Super League.
Yeah.
So while all of these things didn't literally happen, they were, along the right path.
Oh God, yeah.
How early along was that, you being playful there, knowing where Nathan was going
Yeah.
early along in the process?
I knew broadly where it was heading from when we shot the gala episode of season 1, so episode 4. Jason explained the full 3-season arc in broad terms, so I knew that there'd be the downfall in season 2, and then the redemption in season 3. So I knew where it was all headed, but I didn't obviously know the specifics, and I didn't quite know the pace at which they would
Right.
try to redeem him or show his sort of downfall in season 2. So they were all kind of when I got the scripts, I would be like, okay, so this is how we're kind of pitching this. And so although incidentally, I remember when Brendan had first arrived back in the UK to start filming season 3, so this would have been early last year, so like January of 2022. And he was living like 5 minutes down the road from where I live, because we were living in Richmond at the time. And I sat down with Brendan for a drink in the Prince's Head, actually, which is the pub in the show. And he was like, right, come on, if you've got questions, ask me, come on, because he'd had like a couple of drinks. And I was like, right, my first question, and genuinely my first question, the only thing I wanted to know was whether Ted and Rebecca got together at the end.
Were you team Ted Becca?
Of course I was, yeah, of course I was. But he was like, of course they don't. And I was like, oh. And so I knew that for a long, long time. And obviously I saw social media doing its thing and everyone getting into Ted Becca and all that. And I was like, oh, please. No, it's not going to change what's been written and what's been filmed, sadly. But, I still hold out hope.
So you also had your heart ripped out at the beginning of the finale when they had that fake out at Rebecca's house in the morning after.
Well, we all watched it together as a cast, just in a hotel room, rather than do anything with too much fanfare, just because with the writer's strike and everything. And so we just all watched it together, which was actually really, really nice. But we were kind of whooping and cheering at all those kinds of. So when when Ted first appears, all sort of doughy-eyed and his hair all ruffled, we're like, woo! But we all knew what was coming, sadly. But God, that scene between Hannah and Jason at the airport, where Hannah does that to her mouth when she sort of got just those tears in her eyes and she just doesn't know what to. That's so moving. She was, the lot of them are incredible, but so
absolutely great. Brilliant. All right, bringing it back to Nate though. I love the parallel between you and your football pitch that you have in the house to, mark up your tactics on, and Ted with his Lego dog track that him and Henry have built, and the way that you each have each other on the sidelines still. And I feel like the first moment that I was like, okay, it was early on in the season, but there's still hope. He's not all gone, is when you flick the ball, knock Ted off the pitch, and then bend over, pick him up, give him a little nod. I just love that beautiful moment and the way that it kind of parallels foreshadows where you're coming back to, and then parallels this relationship between the two of you still caring about each other.
Yeah, that's the start of episode 4 as well. So that's quite early into season 3. We kind of know where it's headed. But I think that I seem to recall the scripted bit of that was, I think Nate says, sorry, Ted. He says sorry to the figure as part of that action, but I think they cut it. I think because it's possibly felt too on the nose, and we sort of got that. Clearly, that's what he's sort of thinking rather than having to say it out loud. I can't remember now whether it's in the final cut or not. But yeah, I remember we shot a few where he would then pick Ted up and apologize to him because he'd knocked him over, but actually he's apologizing for everything.
I love that since we don't actually get to see the real apology in that episode when he's trying to, you know, work up the courage to do it. He can say it to the action figure, but not to the real life Ted. But last question here, bringing it all back to Star Wars, as we have talked a couple times. I know last time you were mentioning that, you know, when you see season 3, there's an Easter egg, there's something in the production design that is so, you know, just blatantly Star Wars, you're gonna have your mind blown. Obviously, the second I saw Rupert's window, I knew exactly what you were talking about. The Emperor Palpatine vibes are very heavy. From the window to, you know, his cloak, his trench coat that he wears all season.
Oh, it's phenomenal. The way it moves, that coat that Anthony wears. Yeah, it's so Darth Vader vibe. Well, it's just, Emperor vibes. It's just great. And of course, what that means is that makes Anakin, right? Which we know that he must be redeemed. And so, it was all put. That's Paul Cripps's brilliant design.
I think you could make a case that maybe not you, maybe Jade is the chosen one, because, you know, she is the one in season 2 that inadvertently helps set Nathan down this path to the dark side by not giving the window seat. And then also the one who brings him back to the light via the relationship, helping redeem him. So I think maybe she's Anakin Skywalker. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah, that's a really good take. I like that. Yeah, let's just blame Jade.
Yeah, let you off scot-free. But Nick, thank you so much. This is an absolute blast to get to catch up with you again. I appreciate everything you've done for Ted Lasso, for the fandom, and I'm excited to follow the show throughout award season, follow you, and see what's coming next.
Thanks so much, Zach. Take care. Hopefully we'll speak again.